Dreams bring lucidity to our thinking. I think, therefore I am. René Descartes' thinking gave him the certainty that he did, in fact, exist. At the same time, he was aware that he was thinking, and he was able to contemplate his own thoughts. Scientists call this reflection on one's own thinking metacognition, a skill that so-called lucid dreamers have as well. Elisa Filovich and Simone Kuhn at the Max Planck Institute for Human Development in Berlin are studying which brain regions are particularly pronounced in lucid dreamers, and whether it is the same ones that are also related to metacognition. Our brains can't stop thinking. They constantly produce thoughts. Sometimes they wander involuntarily and focus on trivialities like the weather, and sometimes we direct our thoughts deliberately. Often, our minds consciously categorize impressions, feelings, and decisions. They judge what we see, hear, and feel, or the things we remember. Metacognition. It sounds philosophical, doesn't it? Asks Simone Kuhn, a group leader at the Max Planck Institute for Human Development, and explains the term with an example from everyday experience. A car passes you on your way to work, an event you barely noticed. Later, when you're asked to describe the car, you have to call up your memory of it. But how certain are you that your memory is accurate? This is where metacognition comes into play. In other words, in this case, questioning your own memories. Normally, the more intensely a situation is perceived, the more convinced we are about it. Our thinking about our own visual perception can be measured in the lab using functional magnetic resonance imaging. This method can't make the activity of neurons directly visible, but it shows the oxygen consumption in a region. Neurons that are actively involved in thought processes are particularly hard at work and therefore withdraw a lot of oxygen from the blood. Consequently, in active brain regions, there is a higher share of oxygen-poor blood. From the different magnetic properties of oxygen-rich and oxygen-poor blood, the scanner can generate an image that shows the brain's activity. Consciousness works differently during sleep. When we dream, we perceive events consciously, but we can't reflect on them. Lucid dreamers, in contrast, are capable of self-reflection during dreams. Lucid dreamers know they are dreaming and are self-aware. Researchers worldwide are attempting to fathom metacognition in various ways. In an earlier study, scientists from London, for example, presented the participants with two dim grey circles in succession for just a couple thousandths of a second. Afterwards, the subjects had to make two decisions. Which of the two circles was brighter, and how certain am I? Subsequent measurements in the MRI scanner have shown that people with strong visual metacognitive skills have a slightly larger Brodmann area, a region in the anterior prefrontal portion of the cerebral cortex. Right here, says Kuhn, tapping herself on the forehead. For Elisa Filovich and Simone Kuhn, lucid dreamers are one of the keys to understanding metacognition. Lucid dreamers know they are dreaming, explains Filovich. They reflect on their own dreams and are self-aware. Some lucid dreamers can even control the course of their dreams. In a joint project with colleagues from the Max Planck Institute for Psychiatry in Munich, Kuhn and Filovich want to use this ability to learn more about metacognition. One of the first scientists to move lucid dreams out of the corner of fringe scientific phenomena and into the light of serious science 35 years ago was American psychologist Stephen LaBerge. LaBerge himself was a lucid dreamer, and for his doctoral dissertation went into a sleep lab. He demonstrated that he could move his eyes back and forth in a previously agreed manner in his sleep as soon as he slipped into a lucid dream. consciously controllable communication while asleep, which has since been scientifically validated through multiple studies, offers a great opportunity for research. It's the only way researchers can see, under controlled conditions in an fMRI experiment, which brain regions become active during the transition from an unconscious to a conscious state. After all, even modern imaging methods can't visualize when and where exactly consciousness sets in upon waking. From measurements of the electrical brain activity using an electroencephalogram, EEG, we know that the basic activity of the brain is sharply reduced during sleep. The prefrontal cortex, for instance, located behind the forehead, are only weakly active. Although people dream intensely in the REM phases of sleep, and the eyes move behind the lids, and the EEG patterns resemble those in the waking state, we don't have the capability of self-reflection in these phases. Precisely what takes place in the brain during lucid dreaming was long unknown. In 2012, scientists at the Max Planck Institutes for Psychiatry in Munich and for Human Cognitive and Brain Sciences in Leipzig, as well as at Berlin's Charité Hospital, discovered that various brain regions become active within seconds of a lucid dream being signaled. Among these regions are the prefrontal cortex, including the frontal region. In contrast, during REM sleep and the usual dreams that occur then, these regions aren't very active. EEG analyses have also shown that although the prefrontal cortex is more active during lucid dreams than during REM sleep, it doesn't approach the activity levels during wakefulness. In other words, it's an intermediate state. But this could still be called metacognition, says Kuhn. Building on this, Filovich and Kuhn wanted to examine this phenomenon further in a study. The problem with lucid dreamers, however, is that there aren't very many of them. Only a few lucid dreamers experience this phenomenon almost daily, while most don't experience it more than once a year. But there are quite a few people who have lucid dreams once in a while, and these were precisely the individuals the Max Planck researchers were interested in. It didn't take them long to find their test subjects. Many students volunteer for psychological studies and provide personal details as part of the process. I myself often participated in experiments as a subject when I was a student, and I learned a lot from it, says Filovich. The two researchers were able to identify around 70 candidates who were suitable as subjects for their lucid dream study. In order to be able to categorize the dreams, the participants were asked to describe their dreams by answering questions on a scale from 1 to 6. Did I have control over other characters or the environment? Did I observe myself in the dream from outside? Was it clear to me that the events in the dream would have no influence on my waking life? In addition, for 1 week, the participants documented how often they dreamt like this or in a similar way. Using these details, Filovich split them into 2 groups: people who have lucid dreams relatively often and those who rarely or never have these dreams. First, the researchers surveyed the brain structure of the study participants. The MRI can distinguish 2 different elements of the brain: the so-called gray matter, the regions in which the cell bodies of the neurons lie, and the white matter, the nerve fibers. If the neurons of a region are challenged for a sustained period of time or are insufficiently challenged, the volume of the gray matter can potentially change there. The MRI findings show that the frontal region of the cerebral cortex is larger in lucid dreamers than in non-lucid dreamers. This is one of the regions that in the earlier study had proven to be active when a metacognitive thought occurs. Accordingly, the frontopolar cortex is larger both in lucid dreamers and in people with strong visual metacognitive skills. We thus found, for the first time, a connection between metacognition and lucid dreams, explains Filovich. Not all people are equally capable of metacognitive thought. Some can judge their mental state better than others. Is it possible to train metacognition? Unfortunately, metacognitive training has so far proven to be difficult. An initial attempt to train the metacognitive abilities of test subjects for 1 week showed no measurable success. People find the usual tasks to be simply too boring. Who wants to spend weeks assessing their own perception of dim grey circles, says Kuhn. The researcher was able to show, in the context of a study on video games, that the enjoyment factor affects the measurement results. The more fun the subjects had, the more pronounced the changes in the brain were, says Kuhn. Lucid dreaming is in fashion these days. A Google search returns countless tutorials, courses, and videos. In principle, it's quite easy to train lucid dreaming. Throughout the day, just regularly ask yourself whether you are dreaming at that moment. By repeatedly directing your awareness to dreams and reality, the question will eventually also turn up in your sleep. This is the first step to having a lucid dream. Filovich and Kuhn want to test, in a further study, whether this really works and whether one's metacognition will benefit from training in lucid dreams. The particular appeal of lucid dreaming consists in doing something that isn't possible in real life. Motor skills could be practiced in a dream and then used in the waking state. Thus, athletes, for example, could essentially train in their sleep. For others, this kind of dream is a way to avoid nightmares. Furthermore, logical thinking works differently in dreams. We believe that problems could also be solved by new logical approaches available in dreams, says Elisa Filovich. And learning how to lucid dream could shed light on yet another aspect. It is known that, in visual tasks, metacognitive processes take place in the frontal cortex. But metacognition relates not only to sight, but also to hearing, feeling emotions, and remembering. Are these processes controlled by other brain areas? In other words, is the frontal region responsible for us knowing what we see and another area for us knowing what we hear? Are people who know exactly what they see also good at knowing how much they can recall? Is there a higher level module that controls all the other regions? To find answers to these questions, it is likely that many more volunteers will have to look at grey circles and reflect on their thoughts in an MRI machine. Lucid dreamers may also be better able to think about their own thoughts in everyday life. Different brain regions, like the prefrontal cortex, including the frontal region, are more active during a lucid dream than in a normal dream. The size of the frontal cortex differs between lucid dreamers and non-lucid dreamers. Since this region is also involved in metacognitive thinking, this suggests that lucid dreams and metacognition are connected.